All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're breaking down a pretty wild analysis that claims the real seat of power in America isn't in Washington, D.C. anymore. It's in Silicon Valley. We're going to walk through what's described as a detailed blueprint for how a small group of tech titans are, allegedly, redesigning the country from the inside out. Let's get to it.
It's a huge question, right? We tend to think of presidents, senators, the usual suspects, as the ones calling the shots. But what if the real architects, the ones really drawing up the plans, are playing a completely different game?
Well, according to the source material for this explainer, that's exactly what's happening. It argues the center of political gravity has totally shifted. The idea is that a super-connected network of tech investors and founders is now at the wheel, running the country with the same ruthless efficiency as a startup.
And at the very center of this web, according to this analysis, is one person, Peter Thiel. He's not just presented as a billionaire investor, but as the master architect of this whole new power structure in America.
So how did we get here? Well, the blueprint is laid out over decades. It starts with building a network of brilliant people through PayPal, the famous PayPal Mafia. Then it's about getting inside the system by founding Palantir, a massive defense and intelligence contractor. Next, you fund the future with Founders Fund. And finally, the argument goes, you leverage that entire machine for direct political control.
But, no architect builds alone. This plan, as it's laid out in our source, depends on a really tight inner circle. Each person has a critical job to do. So let's meet the key players.
First up, a name everyone knows, but maybe in a context you haven't considered. Elon Musk is framed here not just as a visionary CEO, but as the chief operator, the guy who actually makes the grand plan happen.
So this slide really breaks down Musk's supposed role. He's not just a private citizen. He's the #1 contractor for the Department of Defense with SpaceX. He's NASA's go-to guy. The source points to his appointment to lead government efficiency with a mandate to basically reboot how the country functions. The bottom line is his alleged control over our most critical infrastructure: space, defense, and power.
Okay, next up, moving into the political arena, we have J.D. Vance. He's presented as Thiel's hand-picked successor, someone specifically groomed to take the reins of executive power.
So why the vice presidency? You might be wondering that. Well, according to this analysis, it's the ultimate training ground. It's the one job that gives you a security clearance to see everything, all U.S. intelligence, and it puts you a heartbeat away from the presidency. The mandate is crystal clear. Learn how the state works from the inside so you can become the engine for this whole operation, no matter who's actually president.
All right, so you've got the operator and the political insider. But who's writing the rules? Who's in charge of policy? The source says that role falls to another PayPal alum, David Sacks.
Sachs's whole world is the new frontier of tech policy. Think AI and crypto. As a special advisor, his job is to hardwire a pro-crypto and pro-AI agenda directly into the White House. The source even connects this directly to the real world, suggesting that when you see Bitcoin surge after some pro-crypto political news, it's a direct result of this kind of insider influence.
Okay, so beyond that inner circle, there's a second layer, the specialists. Think of these guys as the strategists, the ones tasked with pulling off very specific and often pretty aggressive geopolitical moves.
Jacob Hellberg, coming from Palantir, is described as the architect of America's new, more aggressive foreign policy. His role as an undersecretary basically puts him in charge of fighting the tech war with China and, this is key, locking down global energy and resource supply chains for the United States.
Then you have Ken Howery. Now, ambassador to Denmark sounds pretty standard, right? But this analysis frames it as an absolute strategic masterstroke. Why? Because Denmark controls Greenland, and Greenland is sitting on a treasure trove of rare earth minerals and is the key piece of real estate for controlling the Arctic. His job isn't shaking hands, it's about grabbing resources and blocking Russia and China.
And of course, every team needs an enforcer. That's where Mike Gallagher comes in. As the former head of the House's China Committee and now a Palantir advisor, his alleged job is to execute a strategy of external containment. What does that mean? It means using things like semiconductor export bans to build a technological wall around China.
Okay, so we've met the players, we know their roles. But what is the end game here? What is the grand strategy that they're all supposedly working towards?
The source lays it out as a super clear 4-step playbook for making sure America stays on top. First, you choke off China's access to critical tech. Second, you secure your own energy and resources. Third, you control global supply chains. And fourth, you dominate the new frontiers, the Arctic, space, and the digital world. Every single person we've talked about fits perfectly into one of these steps.
And this slide really highlights the new method. Let's go back to Ken Howery in Denmark. Traditional diplomacy is about persuasion, negotiation, trying to find a win-win. But VC-style diplomacy? That's about boxing your opponent in. You restrict their options until the only logical choice they have left is the one that benefits you. It's not about compromise. It's about creating a forced choice. It completely changes the game of international relations. This quote from the source material just hits the nail on the head. The argument is that while most of us are distracted by the day-to-day political drama on the news, the real action is happening at a deeper structural level. And the smart money? It's not waiting to see what happens. It's already moving, placing its bets based on this new design.
So when you put all these pieces together on the board, what's the picture that emerges? The source argues it's a nation being fundamentally re-engineered to operate just like a venture capital firm, lean, brutally strategic, and obsessed with maintaining its competitive edge.
And here it is, all laid out. It's a classic hub-and-spoke model with Theo right in the center. Everyone has a very clear, defined role, from execution and policy to resource control, all working together toward one single massive goal.
So the ultimate takeaway from this analysis, the real kicker, is that this isn't just about a new political party or a shift in policy. It's presented as a complete rewiring of how the United States operates, orchestrated by a small, deeply interconnected group from the world of tech and venture capital.
And all of this leaves us with one heck of a final question to chew on. Whether you see this alleged plan as a genius blueprint for efficiency or a scary concentration of power in the hands of the unelected, it definitely forces us to ask who's really in charge. What does it actually mean for all of us when a nation starts to be run like a startup?